Hey, yo, what's good, y'all? It's Stinger, and I look like I belong in an insane asylum. Sorry. Whoo, there we go. Got the new Outlaw beanie. Ordered it 8 months ago and just finally came in. Outlaw, I'm kind of salty about that, but the beanie's sick, so I'll let it slide. Anyway, today we're going to be going over how to make a Brakence Hypnagogia type beat. Now, if you haven't listened to Brakence's album, Hypnagogia, I heavily suggest it. For me, it's Hypnagogia and Punk 2 in terms of how much I like them. They are neck and neck. So with that being said, this is the beat we're going to be breaking down today. I've had insane beat block for the last week or two, and this is the first beat I've made since having that beat block, so I'm super stoked to break it down, and I literally just started on it like an hour ago, so the information is still fresh in my brain. Now, surprisingly for this beat, I started off with the drums instead of starting out with the melody. That's because I already had a drum pattern in my head and ready to go, and I didn't really know what I wanted the melody to sound like, so in hopes of not losing my inspiration and going back into beat block, I laid down the drums first, and then I said I'll worry about the melody later. So with that being said, the first thing that I laid down is this kick pattern. For these kind of glitchy Hypnagogia type of beats, you want to start off with a pretty simple foundation. As you can see, this kick pattern isn't really all over the place, and neither are the next few drums that we're going to be talking about, and that is just to make room for the crazy, insane, glitchy aspects. The next thing I laid down was the snare from a Cymatics EDM drum kit. For drums in these kind of beats, I heavily recommend using any kind of EDM, IDM, hyperpop, even drum kits, because in those you'll find a lot of super creative sounds that aren't just like the Luger slap clap. So that being said, this is the pattern that it's playing. And I have that bad boy layered with a rim-like snare just to give it a little bit more attack and provide some more variation. And now instead of laying down a hi-hat, I threw down a bunch of percussion sounds, which we will be using to make those rhythmic, glitchy sounds you heard in the preview. Now, since there's so many percussive instruments, I'm just going to play the pattern and show where I got them from. And then at the end, I'll show you how to make them into a glitchy loop. So now that you've heard all of the percussive sounds, this is what they sound like all together. Now that's not super interesting, but I'm going to show you the magic sauce on how to transform that into a Brakence glitch loop. Now I know that Brakence uses a granulator for his glitchy sounds, but I threw on Portal with the Pocket Calculator preset, and what it does is it turns all of those percussive instruments into various glitch sounds. So without Portal, this is what it sounds like. And with Portal, this is what it sounds like. Now that is the ear candy we're looking for. Also on this mixer where I have all the percussive instruments routed to, I have OTT at 50% depth, Fresh Air, Soothe 2, an EQ to take out the low end, another instance of OTT, wider to give it some stereo separation, and a limiter with a ceiling as well as a sidechain to the kick and snare. Now you might think that all of this is a little bit overkill, but without any of those effects, this is what the loop sounds like. It's super boring and barely audible. The mixture of all of those plugins just makes it a whole lot more airy, and it kind of taps on the inside of your brain, kind of like how Brakence's ear candy does. The next aspect that I threw down is optional, but it's prevalent in some of the beats in Hypnagogia, and that being the super overused Siren. In any other beat nowadays, I hate hearing that, but since we're going for old school Brakence, I just threw that in there for the nostalgia. So with that being said, this is what the drums sound like all together. All right, now let's move into the melody. The first thing that I threw down is the Agape Warmth pad from Omnisphere. If you've watched my tutorials before, you know I freaking abuse this pad. I use it in pretty much every single one of my beats. And it's just playing this pattern. Now the melody is stupid simple, as you could tell, and it's like that because I wanted the drums to be the main focal point of this beat. So for that melody, I just have it playing a bass line going from the 1 to the 4, back to the 1, and then to the 5. And then after that, I just threw some basic chords on top of it. Now for the next part of the melody, I just copied over the pattern and added in some different notes just playing on another pad. Now my CPU when playing this melody was going through the roof, and when I rendered it out, it kept those little crackly sounds, but it's kind of in the backseat of the mix, so it's not really noticeable. And the last thing that I threw down is this 808, just following the kick pattern and also following the bass notes of the melody. Now for the melody, the mixing is pretty simple, but the only thing I want to go over is this frequency shifter. Brakence uses these a bunch, even nowadays, so I thought I'd throw it in this beat. I just have that playing a super sporadic automation pattern, just going up and down whenever I felt like it would sound good. So with that being said, this is what everything sounds like all together. And then for this next portion, I just cut everything off when the snare hits, added in a phaser, and then threw on a bit crusher. But that's all self-explanatory. I really don't need to go into that. So that is going to pretty much cover how to make an old school Brakence Hypnagogia type beat. Hopefully you enjoyed the tutorial and learned something new. If you have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the comments down below, and I will do my best to answer them. Also consider subscribing, as I post 4 tutorials every week, 2 short ones and 2 long ones. Other than that, that's going to be it. Peace.